Welcome to UCC this week.
Yo.
Thank you all for tuning into the family, seeing what we're coming out, what we are going to be talking about this week. My name is Wesley.
What's good, y'all? It's boy Sep.
My name is JJ.
Gabe in the house.
Yay. You already know what it is, man. What are we talking about today, y'all?
History, bro.
Yeah, today we're talking about the history of cannabis.
Not only the history, talking about its usages in ancient times, continents it came from, right?
Way back.
So the conversation is going to go here and there, but stick with us on this journey as we kind of visit some times, some millennia, some centuries of cannabis, man. So I'm excited to see where we go with this.
Yeah.
So we're gonna start off. Where does it all start?
Honestly,
let's go.
The first textiles that you see of cannabis,
Like textiles, like documents, like actual.
They have like presents.
are from China. It's
Yep.
pre-BC. I believe it's.
Do we know like what
I
dynasty?
think it's like 202.
That's a good question.
Hey, Javi, do you think that you could put in the dynasty that the?
All I know is the Qin dynasty. That's all that comes to mind. But I don't know.
I know it's way back.
Interesting.
202.
I can't
202
think of it.
BC.
I'm pretty sure it's like 202 BC.
It was,
That
28. It dates back to 2800 BC.
2800. Oh
Emperor
shit.
Chen Yun.
Chen Yun.
Pharmacopoeia.
Pharmacopoeia.
Yeah.
Pharmacopoeia.
Yeah, so that's basically just like their book of medicine back
Mm-hmm.
then.
Okay.
Right,
What
yeah.
dynasty,
And
but-
highlighting at this time, right? Like first document, it is kind of like a medicine journal in a
Right.
sense,
Yep.
right? That's like the kind of interpretation of what the plant has to offer or is.
Yeah,
Right.
different herbs and plants and
Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy.
botanicals that you could use for medicine.
With its documentation too, you kind of start to see how it grows, not only throughout the centuries and the millennia, but how people domesticated the plant, right? Taking a strain, taking it to another place, another country, another world, right? Like that's even crazier. But if we wind it back to where we started, you said in China, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about 5,000 BC to 1,000 BC, right? Cannabis being utilized for ropes, paper, and textiles, right? Them utilizing the plant and the hemp fibers, right? The fibers that actually that have usage in it. You know what I mean? That's the actual exciting part, is that they learn to not only grow it for THC purposes, but for actual applications. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? That's the sick part. You know what I mean? And that's what I wish we had today. You know what I mean?
And one thing that we do know about hemp in particular is how vigorous the ruderalis family is when it comes to being a
Right.
fibrous. It utilizes a fibrous material. One huge way that we saw it used was like weaving bow and arrows. They would use it for creating like the tie for the end of the spearhead.
Wow.
They would end up using it to weave a lot of like baskets and stuff. So it was a lot of a wide range of the culture got to utilize hemp.
100%.
It wasn't
As a
just
tool.
Yeah,
it wasn't
as a
just
tool.
the gatherers. It wasn't just the hunters. It wasn't just the medicine women. It wasn't just the sages. You know, the people that were in tune with the plant medicine. This was something that everybody could utilize, and it was.
I 100% agree with that. You know what I mean? Like it showing up and having its prevalence and showing its marker as a plant. You know what I mean? And knowing that now in day and its age where it's at, we're like, holy crap! Like we barely know about it. But then
And they
it's
were
like,
just
then
using what was around them, right?
They were just using it for
They're like,
tools.
oh, there's this plant we have here.
Right.
Let's
100.
break it down and use it to make shit. You know what I mean? And then they're like, well, what happens when you burn it?
Well, it's right. Like who knows if
What happens
even,
when you make
like,
a tea out of it?
Because
Well, spiritualistic.
exactly, and that's what I was gonna tap into. What religious practices might have even taken place if there was like inhalation, right? If there was burning, if there was, which there probably was in India, right? When you go down to the India continents, right? Ganja,
Yeah,
right?
you start
spreading
definitely getting like what you're saying,
right?
like spiritual, ceremonial.
Yeah,
you see it in
religious
a lot of like
purposes
those
a little
ancient
bit.
practices.
And we're talking about
as
ancient times, guys.
a
We're talking
part
about
of
ancient
that
times.
society
Yeah.
and how they conduct their like spirituality, have that outlet is through partially through the plant and having different ceremonies, and
Well,
there's still places of the world that do those same things today
Yeah,
as like
transinduction,
modern time doing
divination,
those ancient
enlightenment,
practices. So
right? using like those plants. So you have the Rastafarians from Jamaica, right?
Even West being able to experience the Afghanistan culture and like the hashish and like that has been deep seated for a very, very long
Thousands
time in
of
their
years.
culture.
Yeah.
So
Literally just having what would be a farmer's market, but it's just a bunch of Middle Eastern selling each other hash. So you go there to like grade each other's hash, what's better, what quality you're looking for and everything. But it's just your normal farmer market. Like no different than, you know what I mean, tomatoes, any other fruit, vegetable being sold.
Right.
That's just kind of
There's no stigma.
the outlet they have, and then they do use it as that spiritual ceremonial when they do praise to like their god. And Middle Eastern practice has you like pray certain directions for a certain amount of time and everything, and
Right.
like you can smoke like the hashish before, and there's different like ways to smoke and ceremonies and different things, but that is a huge part of their practice to smoke and pray.
wow. That's beautiful to know that it's been utilized for so long and so many families have been able to not only cultivate such a spiritual plant together and it's been utilized for so long, but it's kind of sad when you start seeing the way that it's utilized in today's time.
Right.
Like Greece, even utilizing it for its oil content and use it like
Right, well, you can go back to even like the Chinese, right? Even using seed for oils. Right?
Yeah.
The hemp fibers, right? Like using those seeds in the hemp plant to create oils for topical reasons, right? For pain relief reasons, you know.
butters
And
and
stuff like that. And infusing these and then further trying to push the plant to find further practices for it, right? Medicinal uses, spiritual practices. And then further down that line, going down, you got practices in Africa, right? You start seeing the strains showing up in Egypt. You start seeing the strains like that have been showing up in Europe. And not only that, but more the documentation that show up within these different continents. You know what I mean? Like there's even low evidence, but there's evidence that even the Mesopotamians and the Babylonians and the Sumerians, right? We're talking like hundreds of thousands, right? Like these ancient people, right? Using cannabis in its form. So that's what makes it even crazier as well. Yeah.
it's beautiful, dude.
100%.
Yeah, like Vikings, Norwegian Vikings using cannabis.
Wow. I can see that.
For
100%.
They're all
recovery.
jacked up, no way. Dude.
For recovery.
Some Vikings on that land race.
Dude, they would eat a bunch of mushrooms and go pillage a village.
Yeah, they really would. They were
wild.
wild. Valhalla.
Yeah, bro. It's Valhalla.
Valhalla.
And yeah, it's another spirit. You know, they're very spiritual. Like,
Yeah.
And, you know, talking about spiritual things, like that's why some religions are against certain, you know, psychoactive chemicals or...
So let's step forward a little bit in time. Let's not go too far.
For sure.
But even in the 1930s, we were utilizing cannabis very, very consistently. It wasn't taboo to know or hear about somebody implementing cannabis.
No.
in
Even
some
medicinally.
format. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
even in that time, Native Americans were using it, right?
Well, it was in
indigenous
products.
tribes were using it even before. We're talking about even before 1930s, the introduction of, you know, Native Americans and certain tribes, you know, showing them these medicinal and spiritual practices, showing them the effects of it, and then people and these doctors like, oh wow, because in my opinion, I felt like there wasn't as much propaganda to spread at the time, so people actually saw the evidence of the plant working. Right? I couldn't tell you and be like, oh, this is making you crazy because
there was no bad intention,
right? Because
right,
it's
at that
actually
point.
healing you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's cool to see that the Native Americans might have passed that on. You know, we're certain people bringing seeds maybe right from Europe.
Yeah.
Right, you know what I mean? And
Spain.
bringing the hemp fibers over here, maybe even, you know, and starting new agriculture crops here and mixing it in with certain crops and creating new genetics or new plants that have vigor. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, like you said, and then leading up into 1930s, right?
And even like the United States having an industrial boom with hemp.
Oh, 100%.
We
You
had
see
a
it on
hemp
products,
industrial
like-
boom. When we would have railroad carts spilling beans along the railroad tracks and having like an infestation of hemp along the railroad tracks. There's still documentation of people having to go out and like completely whop down all of the hemp that was growing on the canal banks.
Mm-hmm.
It was something that was doing really predominant here in the United States.
Right, and not only that, you have its presence that started, and I'll take it back just to provide a little bit of context, but you had institutions that were rising in Europe as well as Americas. Now, within these institutions, there was documentation, and came along that were professors and students and teachers that were so interested in the plant, right? Hence becoming botanists, chemists, right? Zoologists, all these kind of people that study plants. And you have certain scientists and botanists that were able to isolate these chemicals in the 1750s, right? Up into the 1800s in Europe, which is actually pretty crazy. So these institutions were well before, like documenting how to isolate like CBD and stuff like that without even this like modern practices that we have now. But fast forwarding up into the 1930s, right? Like you said, there was evidence that it worked. You know what I mean?
Yeah, or even just the application.
The applications. It was actually written with those like ingredients on those bottles.
And there was no side effects.
Exactly.
Of, people killing each other and that reefer madness that they came about.
Oh, dude, that's
on.
the next step of where everything really started to hit the fan.
And that's kind of the next turn we're going to take this conversation, right? It's kind of diving into the obstacles and the barriers and the barricades that cannabis had to overcome in terms of its history, right? You're talking like 1930s, right? Reefer madness. What was even before that? You had the first commissioners creating the narcotics, right? The Bureau of Narcotics, right?
So that's in 1970,
You know what I
and that's
mean?
with the Nixon administration.
That's the Substance Abuse Act.
That's the Substance Abuse Act. Yeah, that one was created in the 1930s by Harry Anslinger.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Harry Anslinger.
But it's crazy to think that, that's under 100 years ago, we did have a form of legal cannabis that was being utilized as medicine. Like you do see old pictures of like a bottle for a sleep agent and it's like cannabis, chloroform, and alcohol are the 3 ingredients to help you go to sleep. So like there is those documents, and you can even find like actual literature from institutions on cannabis studies in the 30s before it got put on the
the Substance Control Act in the
Act, yes.
1970s, yes, by Nixon. And we'll kind of like touch upon that a little later. But when you kind of talk about the propaganda of cannabis and its racial history, that's one of the conversations we can't ignore. You had the influx of migrants coming into the country, and you have the scarcity of not even jobs, but more so the environment of how people felt. They felt threatened by the colorism of coming into the country, threatened by the migrants coming in, and the only way to do that was to try to tie in something that seemed crazy enough to tie them to. And cannabis, unfortunately, was one of those things, right? Marijuana being used in the Mexican Spanish-speaking communities, right? And then it being popularized by, go ahead, JJ, what was his name?
William Randolph Hearst.
William Randolph Hearst, who was the...
He was a dude that owned a fucking major newspaper company.
Right. And they worked in conjunction with the government, too, at the time.
Him
which is pretty
and
crazy.
Anslinger.
Anslinger.
They worked together, and because he had control of the newspaper company,
Right.
he could say anything he wanted on there, and so he would say these wildish things like, you smoke a joint and you're gonna kill your brother.
Right, because that was like the first thing was the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937.
Yep.
So while it did not outright ban, this federal law effectively criminalized the possession and sale of cannabis by imposing strict regulations and heavy taxes on its production and distribution. The Marijuana Tax Act was introduced by Harry Anslinger, the first commissioner of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, and was supported by various industries and interest groups, i.e. paper,
Yep.
wood, right? Pharmacology, pharmacy with their synthetic drugs, right? You have the creation of healthcare starting to create like, yo, man, put that away when we can synthesize this at 10 times the rate.
Cheaper, too.
And cheaper, yes.
industry,
like,
right?
And
Because
when
they're
that
starting to
industry's
rise.
already going,
And it's crazy.
and hemp could be way better than fucking paper, but this guy already has so much money in the pot that he's just like, we gotta get this thing
Going.
Yeah.
And then that's what later on led into what Gabe mentioned was the Nixon in the Controlled Substance Act, the CSA, proposed by the Nixon administration. But if we rewind it back, there was a lot of racial history when the Marijuana Tax Act was imposed by these guys. And it's crazy when you guys think about it, like paper, wood, hemp, you would think that they could all get along and we could all, benefit from its uses. From construction, right? I heard like the rumor that the first King James Bible was written in hemp. You know what I mean? And the first pair of Levi jeans was made from hemp ever. You know what I mean? So I'm like,
Yeah.
what the heck? That's even insane.
So that's when you really start
know.
getting into the implication of race, right? And how they were utilizing that terminology of black, brown. They're doing it to rape. They're doing it to manipulate. They're doing it to make you murder, to make you steal.
Listen to these words, right?
Like, those are some heavy
right?
words,
Like not just like heavy, but like dangerous heavy
Like
words,
crazy
right? Yeah,
words,
like
like-
meant to make you and induce something to get you away.
Scared, you
And not
know?
only that, but the echo chambers that it created around the world.
Yes. Yes. And
That's when it got crazy, right? Of the whole world was like, "Yup, USA is leading this. You're right.
yeah.
Because they're like, we're not doing the research.
We're not you guys. You know what I mean?
Like,
so
oh,
guys
you must
say
be
it.
saying something
And
that's
with
right.
America, and every country being influenced during that time, by the Americas, media, influence, propaganda. It's like, you're right. You know what I mean? You're right. This plant, it is making
when
the
you're-
kids go crazy. Yeah,
said it is
it is making, no, get it out of here. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Poster, newspaper, outlets, plaster here, poster here, kids here, go to
Reefer
school,
madness.
reefer madness, everywhere.
Dude, and this is when they were starting to lose the war on racism, right? This is when Martin Luther King started to come around. This is when advocacy for like
Stepping up into the 1960s, right?
yeah, stepping up
By
and
50s,
and for equality when they no longer had the same control that was so consistent in the United States. This was them and their scarce like grab for action of, hey, we can demonize blacks and Mexicans
And tie
and
them,
colored people to this specific plant and the negative connotations that it has around it.
Connotations,
And
yeah.
we can call that back and hopefully regain some of the power that we once had in the United States as a white controlled population. And that's the thing is we have this history and it's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to acknowledge.
Right.
This is something that we don't want to sit here and we hate all of this and that. No, this is us bringing this to light to show that there are
For sure.
manipulative
Narratives,
tactics that have been used to influence the way that we perceive cannabis.
Well, when you think
today.
about it, entertainment's one of the hugest outlets, right, for people, right? Back then, you have these not even like TV shows, channels, but you have media outlets. That's the biggest way people consumed back then, right? Was reading newspapers. You walk down the street
Newspaper,
and people are just
magazines.
reading newspapers and magazines. There's stands or people, and then imagine who owns those publications, and then not only that, who's lobbying for those publications.
Yes.
Exactly.
And not only that, who's paying these lobbyists to lobby for them, right? And it's just it's this sad chain that you kind of start to go up and you realize, oh wait, cannabis has never been studied. It was underfunded, right? Underfunded, not studied properly, taken over by the black market completely, right? After 1930s, it completely went underground. Completely,
Right.
it went silent. The whole world was like, what do we do with this shit now?
They had to.
They were
What do we
smoking
do?
their
And they
joints in
went
the
underground.
closet, dog.
You can't get rid of your
Prohibitionists were
medicine.
getting loud with. They were like, "Yo, we gotta get rid of this." So people went quiet with it. You had these strains like Acapulco Gold that were now gone, right? Panama Reds, maybe. Who knows what was back then? But it was probably low THC. It's probably like really like low stuff. Who knows?
Who knows?
Right?
Land
Who knows?
race,
Right?
dude.
Land races, right? But anyways, as we kind of like move forward with like the 1930s, you have the taxes, right? People not. You have like even pharmacy, like medicine, wars, right? Soldiers maybe like they don't want soldiers, and then like we get into like World War II, I mean, you start going to the hippie.
And then I think that's a
Yeah.
great thing to
So getting
tie it
into-
all in together is looking past the 30s of the legalization when everything went to the black traditional market, right? We had
Can you imagine sitting on
wars
pounds
after,
pounds that
and
you couldn't
so
sell after?
Seth brought up like
What do you do with it?
world wars, right? So we have
Yeah.
world wars happening, and so from that you have veterans going to
yep.
other countries and are having and experiencing cannabis in different forms and different plants there.
Right.
In Vietnam, I'd say Vietnam's definitely one that
Yeah, I
easily
would say
comes
that's
to
one of the
mind.
biggest ones for
And
sure.
so you see, like, I don't know if people out there watch like old war movies or like seen clips, but there's people like soldiers passing around like a shotgun. It's like very well known, like soldiers passing around a shotgun and they're smoking like a joint out of one end of it, like they're lighting it through the barrel pretty much.
It's crazy.
And smoking out of like a shotgun, and that's when it was illegal, right? And so what they ended up doing is they ended up bringing back like seeds and stuff that they could, clones if they could, actual plants, and they brought them back to America, to California predominantly. And so because of that, you're now having a transfer of what was grown in Vietnam now in the United
Cali.
States, in California. And so that is where everything kind of takes over, especially in my eyes,
Well,
for
here's one of my
the
questions
black
too.
market and everything, because they have now all these new genetics, all these new plants.
Yeah, they're not
and
missing out on
Well,
anything.
They're not. So,
Here's one of my conjunctions to that is, do you think that when they tried these strains in Vietnam, it helped their PTSD?
Yes.
Or it made them
And
paranoid
that's
as
why they
fuck.
were or paranoid. But do you think that's why they were so huge in advocating for it when they came back for their PTSD, right? Because it's like, yo, holy shit, man, I'm not thinking about trying to kill the next guy. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm actually chilling
I
out.
mean,
Just freaking
I
in
mean,
the
I can
jungle.
definitely
Who knows,
speak
right?
easily.
But it's
That's definitely true.
you
I
know,
mean,
like,
definitely being a
because I'm sure when they
medicinal
came
outlet.
back, yeah, like Vietnam,
sure.
like vets were like first publicly to out publicly speak about how it helped with their PTSD.
And you see that in today's fight, even with like
In
veteran
Afghanistan
advocacy
and
for
Iraq, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean just like veteran advocacy, just
Advocacy,
to
yeah.
have the VA or a healthcare system to have veterans get access to cannabis, right? No different than any pharmaceutical that is easily prescribed when the veteran is in a legal state, has the legal documentation, and just needs more of the funds. And that's where it is definitely medicinal. Even to now, like people are in a way waking up or coming to that this plant has a lot of medicinal value, for sure. But big shout out to like definitely all the old veterans,
vets.
Bringing those
definitely
seed packs on the plane
who led
back,
the way.
man.
No, seriously,
Seriously,
and-
man. It's created a movement, man. You guys planted seeds, and the trees are continuing to grow. The fruits are continuing to fall, and they're continuing to spread. And without you guys, we pay homage to you guys, taking the risk to bring those back and still advocating for your medicine. You know what I mean? To this day, you know what I mean? That's the important. Is the fight for yourself in terms of, hey, man, I need this.
Yeah.
We're like, hey, we agree with you that you need this too. You know what I mean?
And I think
So,
maybe a good way to speed this up too is talking about like veterans. We brought up California.
right. So if we
So
go
talking
back
about
to World
California
Wars,
black market, right?
you got the hippie
Traditional
era of the
market, you have, like-
1960s, right?
Yes.
The counterculture to the war,
Yes.
right? That people didn't want to
you
go to
go.
war, so they started to protest, right? You got them in the streets, you know what I mean? They're starting to. You had I forgot the gentleman that brought back I think it was LSD or psychedelics from India, kind of in the
Albert Hoffman?
Was it?
That's
was
the
it?
curator
That's
of
the guy who made
LSD.
LSD.
It was-
But I don't know
it
if
was a
he's
gentleman.
the gentleman that brought
Yeah.
it back.
No,
But
it was
contrary
the-
to that, it was how cannabis was influential to these people in the 60s and 70s, because that's where you start to see the rise of like, hazes, and then you start to see people growing, and then you start to see people like,
Blueberries,
sending their kids to
skunk.
war. Like, I'm not going to war. I'm hippie. I'm feeling good with singing in the park with my brothers and sisters with flowers over my head, singing, kumbaya. That's what the 60s counterculture was, and that's what continued with cannabis throughout the eras. You had the war on drugs in the 70s, right, with Nixon, Reagan in the 80s or 90s, 70s with Nixon.
Yes.
Counterculture, right? Hippies.
Yes.
That was a crazy time. And against war. You know, they didn't want to go to war. Kids were like, fuck this, man. They were outside in the streets.
Even Muhammad Ali.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, I'm not going to war.
Yeah, proponents that were huge too, like advocating for war and cannabis. So, like you said, after the war, vets coming back advocating for their medicinal use. And then I think it was in 1960, if I remember correctly, 1964, the first cannabis facility was created. Don't quote me, but it was in the University of Mississippi. And it's still to this day. Like it was like the first government funded research cannabis facility. Because once they knew, they knew.
Hey, that's where G13.
That's the rumor that government strain.
That's where that definitely quote unquote secret government strain comes from. G13.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's
interesting topic.
as hell. Yeah.
And it's really cool to start seeing the hybridization of cannabis throughout the years as well. Like, we got to touch on it a little bit. And we're coming back into the light now of the removing the stigmatisms that cannabis has and kind of trying to help with the taboo cloud that eludes cannabis.
Well, what's the campaign that was led against us when we were kids?
Dude, DARE.
The DARE program.
Yeah,
DARE
bro.
program, yeah.
DARE,
Remember I brought that up.
Because a lot of people say, right, there's the Nancy Reagan with the war on drugs with her husbands, just
That
say
scared
no.
the shit out of me, bro.
But then ours was DARE, right? I don't even remember what it stood for, to be honest.
No.
Drugs
Drugs
are really encouraging. Psych.
I felt there. I don't know.
But that just goes to show the campaigns that led, you know what I mean, against even cannabis, trying to put cannabis in that category. You know what I mean? You had arrests starting to increase. You had people resorting more to the black market. You had closet growers more than ever in the 90s and 80s and the 2000s.
Oh, the closet growers were unreal.
You know, you had the basement growers. You had these guys distributing like madmen in the 2000s because they had nowhere else to go. And people still found medicinal uses. I mean, people were having seizures and people were still dropping oil in their mouth like, look, hey, it's working. They're like, sorry. And you're like, God, what does it take to show you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
and these are kids, too.
And these are kids, you know what I mean? So you have like Dr. Sanjay Gupta actually having to go on TV with one of the little girls in Colorado and being like, oh, wow, like you stopped having seizures once you were admitted with this. It's like, yeah, did you have to see her go through an episode for you to see that? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's
you guys seen that video
you know
of the guy
saying?
with Parkinson's and he's
Right.
shaking?
Exactly.
That just changed the game for a
It's
lot of
he's
people,
good.
dude.
He's chill. Yeah.
So this is the history we're kind of talking about with its medicinal uses, guys. It's like it was outlawed and people saw it. People took advantage of it. Companies, lobbyists, lawmakers, governments, police, even, you know what I mean? People being paid to arrest, you know, cannabis advocates. But now we've reached a day and age where we're still advocating for it, right? You know what I mean? So many states are
always
still
be advocating
against
for
it. You know?
Always, dude.
And it's full effect. We're not saying like, yeah, we want it legalized. We're like, no, we want to grow it. We want to trade
Smoke
with each
it.
other. We want to have a farmer's market where we can interact with each other. Like,
Other
that's what we're
farmers.
asking other farmers.
Other
you know what
genetics.
I mean? Exactly. And that's what the
What kind
fight
of
is
heirloom
right now.
tomatoes are you
exactly.
growing?
And just so you guys know, cannabis is everywhere around the world. Africa, South America, what other continents?
Canada.
Australia, New Zealand, Canada. You can find it everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's everywhere. If you didn't
Except
know, it's
Antarctica.
everywhere. Except Antarctica.
Maybe.
Hey,
You might find a frozen
Some
blood.
hydro.
You might find
you're
a frozen
telling me,
blood.
hydro.
you're telling me somebody's growing in space, but not Antarctica?
But no, come on.
Come on.
They're trying to do. They're probably trying to find a strain that can like grow with like Sub-Zero or something, bro.
G14.
We're on to you, government. We know. We're on to you. Anyways, guys, this is what it is. The history, man. Talking about its uses, where it's been, its applications. It was useful for hemp, for homes, construction, textiles, ropes, hemp. We even use what hemp wicks to light our cannabis flowers.
Sep, I have a
You know
question
what I
for you.
mean?
Even
for those in other states.
Before you smoked and stuff, and before you were a cannabis advocate,
Oh, gosh.
did you like realize
Oh gosh, no.
the usages
No,
of
I
it,
didn't.
like
I
with
didn't. No,
weaving
I realized
and hemp,
None. Nope, nothing.
industrial hemp?
I was so indoctrinated and ingrained with like, yo, what is this usage? Weed.
Yeah.
It's literally called weed for a reason because it just goes for a ground. That's
You
what
never
was my
seen like a
perception.
hemp T-shirt?
Nah, I didn't give a damn about no hemp t-shirt because I'm like, man, what is that? It's just some grass, some organic grass growing on the shirt. I didn't really think about it till now. It's like, oh wow, you see farmers where they have fields and fields of it, you know?
Right.
And you're like, oh, wow, this can make us money.
Shirts, blankets
Definitely.
made from it, buildings made from it.
Buildings, bro. That's
You
crazy.
guys can make money. Legalize it. So, yeah, and that's what we're doing here at UCC. We just try to advocate. We continuously advocating. And thank you, Utah, you know, is kind of hopping on board, surprisingly, with its
Yeah.
religious background. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So, shout outs to still Utah for making its progressive movements. And go to a state, man, that is kind of making those moves. Like, if you're in a state where cannabis is hard, like, you're kind of making it hard for yourself, or try to fight for it, you know?
Right.
But there are states that are
Speak
moving
up.
forward, but other countries
Speaking
are not.
about on progression in Utah, we just had a bill pass with psychedelic therapy.
We did.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
we did.
Using
Behavioral
psilocybin.
They're the ones that
So
posted.
that's amazing. You know, legalizing psilocybin and further progressing that in this state is
Beautiful.
beautiful.
Plant medicine
The world needs
is
it.
huge, you know, especially now where we've been synthesized so much with chemicals, you know, since we were young,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Side it is, dude. It's in food.
Yeah.
It's in everything. So just having a holistic outlet, right? Something that's organic, something that you're sometimes when you consume, it's living, right? Flower in a way is a living organism. So you are consuming like living things that are fresh and clean that can sometimes be a lot better and cleaner outlet than other medicines and alternatives. So I'm very thankful. Like you're saying, being in Utah where we do have a medical scene, and we will always have that outlet currently to go get medicine at a pharmacy. Have easy access.
I mean, 100%. Before this, I didn't know any information, you know, like now that I know its applications, and it's like, oh, hemp has been here for thousands. When you say thousands, that means
It's
like
hard to think about.
yeah, that's like you and billions of other humans before you that used the plant, right? So
Right.
it's genetically in our system. If you didn't know,
Yeah. Let them know.
it's
Tell
called,
'em
you
about
know,
it.
we'll probably have to talk about that on our next episode, but we're not scientists or anything, but it's an emerging science, right? The endocannabinoid system,
The ECS.
right? Yeah, the ECS, the synergistic, right?
don't they have to use
Relationship between cannabis and our bodies, and only cannabis, right? Cannabis one being the only medicines, like plants that has that special synergistic with. Anyways, but yeah, we hope you guys have found some timeline in cannabis. You know, it's definitely helped us, because when you know where the plant comes from, it helps. When you know its history, and you're like, oh, it's how people. Did people wrote papers on it? Like, yeah, like, oh, when I heard that hemp was written on the Bible, I was like, you know,
Bible's written on it.
you know, the Bible was written on. When I heard the Bible was written on hemp, you know, I was like, dang, that's crazy. What if they were probably lit, breathing in all some? What if they just decided to chew on some hemp
Yeah,
and
bro.
then get to writing? You know what I mean? Anyways, cooking, seeds, you know, applications, all these continents and past millennias, and have shown us to this present day how it can be used.
If
you
Utah
know?
hasn't progressed to this point, would Sep have left to a different state to go follow the plan?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was on the same boat. I was thinking about going to Colorado.
I'm sure these guys do.
'Cause I wanted to get in the
Yeah, we
industry,
were
man.
like, yeah.
Yeah.
Not only did I want to be
Yeah.
a part of, you know, a legal system, but I also wanted to get in the industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Work
No,
with the
that
plant.
too. I definitely wanted to like learn more, but I mean, for me at the time, I was already like cultivating a little bit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like super ready to kind
And
of
that's
just go all
and that's
in.
where it's at right now, man. That's where we're trying to get to, back to where people can self-help, like grow them. You know what I mean? Cannabis grow themselves. What is homegrown cultivation? Let me put it in proper terms.
Yes.
That's where we've reached
Homegrown
now in
cultivation,
history.
Yes.
Homegrown cultivation and legalizing for yourself.
Yep.
Because it's like I'm sure they did it back then, and 100 years later, we're trying to do it again. 1924, right? 2024.
And that's just bringing
Yeah.
it back to the
Just
modern
years
history,
ago.
right? So like the modern history, like we're in a current fight to get certain forms of consumption or home cultivation, maybe more licenses. Like we do have a program, but it is fighting for certain expansions that we know as
has some work.
patients. are the right moves. you know?
Right.
And that we need so that we have a better medicinal outlet, right? If we are only allowed pharmacies, then it's at our best interest to kind of hold them to the highest
best,
standards, and we kind of need more, in a sense, to give some competition a little bit.
Well, variety, and for people options.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It gives people to go and find a small batch. It's like, yo, I don't want this generic staple brand strain you've been using. Let me go to this like guy who's been growing blueberry mac train wreck.
Oh my god. Way to be
blueberry
specific.
strain that.
Shout out Brandon Russ.
Yes. But you
Shout
know
out
what we're
Brandon
going.
Russ. Yeah.
So
Yes. And having those small micro batch or small batch cultivations, or being able to have a license to do that yourselves as like a home grow, is what the end goal as a patient or consumer, as you should be. You will always have to have a pharmacy, so that will always be around. Not everyone wants to grow their own.
Right. That makes sense.
It's some people don't have the time. It's inconvenient, or
Just like we got, everything at the supermarket, tomatoes,
Yes.
everything. You don't, we're going to need pharmacies.
Yeah, exactly. Not everyone has a
dispensaries.
garden, so it's going
Right.
to be similar. So I mean, you're always going to have a lot of revenue coming back to the state, and we're just in a market right now that if we expand more, like, I think everybody just gets more, to be honest, because it'd be hard sometimes, like just feeling that everybody's like fighting against each other, or having to drive far away between pharmacies, or jump through a lot of hoops to get things. So
or they're all in it together.
I'd say, bringing it back to history a little bit, late 1990s, early 2000s, media, hip-hop, that I think that, people speaking about cannabis and their use in their music, Dr. Dre, The Chronic, bro. Like, that was,
California being the
the
first
album
state,
cover was
right?
literally a marijuana leaf. You're like, yo,
Well, what was
2002.
what was the first state to legalize
That shit
cannabis?
was-
Right, California, right in '96.
Yep.
Right, being one of those first states to move forward and take that step forward. You got patients in San Francisco.
California's always been pushing the boundaries, man.
And then when you
Right.
you go a little further and you're like raids.
Yep.
All the raids that have probably taken place, right?
In
historically
California.
In California.
And they're
all
like,
the
"Oh, we're doing this right."
mountaintop. You know, you got
And
guys
then
that are
these
going
people
up
just
there
come
medicinally,
through.
and you got choppers everywhere, right?
Yeah.
You
It
know,
was
you can
wild,
find these
bro.
documentaries everywhere online, guys. If you go on
Yeah.
Netflix, you can go on Hulu, you find literally, what marijuana mania.
The struggle
you know?
of the early 2000s.
Exactly, and it's literally men and women in the mountains, hands up, being raided by police. You know what I'm saying?
Thinking
And that's
they're doing this
historical
the
side.
right way.
Right,
Thinking
and
they're
then
this
right.
is legal in our state.
And then
But
JJ going back and talking about it, you had artists talking about cannabis. You had
Yeah.
it shown up in media. You even had it show up
Movies.
in music, right? In the 1930s, you had like Miles Davis and these guys.
What's
right?
the first stoner movie
Using
you watched?
cannabis. They called it what? Bluesy. First stoner movie I've watched. I was gonna say
Cheech
Cheech
and
and
Chong, bro. Yeah.
you gotta be Cheech and
They was a
Chong,
huge
David.
asset in the history of cannabis. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
dude.
huge. Cheech and Chong, Dave Chappelle, and
Dazed and Confused, man.
yeah, dude. Like, there's so many funny ass movies where
Like
you can feel
Friday
like, oh,
for
let me
me, yeah. Let me just
take
smoke
part on
and
this,
watch these-
cannabis, and
Oh,
also
be
watch
real.
this where they, they were high making
Cypress
those
Hill,
movies.
these groups pushing seed packs in their tours.
Insane in the membrane.
Right, you know what I mean. So, and we forgot to touch upon that too. We might
Dr.
have to do a part
Green
2 to this
Yeah,
too.
dude.
Touching on the history of like music and arts,
Yeah.
and the influence of culture
'Cause
historically.
You have so much to dump
You
into
know?
this. This is your sector right
well,
here.
even like JJ with music,
And, yeah,
right?
JJ
Hip
too.
hop, EDM, the influence of how cannabis has influenced all parts of our lives with
Definitely
that.
gonna
we might
have
need
to
to
hit
do a
around
part 2,
too.
yeah, with this that on that historical side, because you have like the blues and the music of like the 40s and 30s,
Soul.
right? So and they were using cannabis, at the time. So
jazz music.
exactly,
Well, then,
jazz music.
where
That's why it gets crazy.
We also kind of skipped
know?
over it, like the whole black market, where that stuff
Right.
really comes from, Emerald Triangle, but that's also very deeply rooted, the growers in that community to the big artists, right?
Yeah,
Where do you think, you know what I mean? Like, they're obviously learning, they're you know what I mean? They're getting information and stuff from elsewhere, from the traditional black market and everything. And so that's where it gets
It all
real in
intertwines.
depth and crazy. So
It's
Yeah.
all connected.
and that's because the traditional market had such an impact. You know what I mean? 1940, let's say, till 2000, right? I don't know when when California went
1996.
96.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean you're 60 years, close to 60 years that no matter what you had only the traditional market. So obviously it was going to be a landslide of what's dominant, and it completely took over. And I think it's really good that we'll take maybe some time to highlight that journey as well and its impact to those artists in the industry that everybody knows and loves.
Yeah, and just how cannabis culture is intertwined with media, music, and all that. Definitely
Man.
should touch up on that.
Yeah, because that in of itself,
It's-
I think, is so vital because
Oh, yeah.
that's what has propelled the biggest echo chambers for people, right? Like, for instance, when you're like told like, oh, cannabis is this, cannabis is that, cannabis is this, and then you're being told constantly through media, through books, through social media, through YouTube as a kid, right? You're being seen
yeah.
like, don't do drugs, you know what I mean? Like, that plays a huge part into the psyche of what you consume, you know? Even if you use it as a kid, right? Like, yeah, people, you smoke weed, yeah. I mean, like, you're in there, you know what I mean?
And that's
But
a
you
filter
can't even
they're putting
fully
on
talk about it
themselves,
now,
bro.
You know?
That's a filter they're putting onto themselves because
Oh,
of
yeah.
the scarcity.
And we'll have to talk about it historically, maybe with like athletes and stuff too. You know what I mean? Cannabis and stuff. So definitely, we're gonna swing the ball back around.
Yeah.
This ballpark
Yeah.
for sure when it comes to history of cannabis.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll have to really dive back into what we mentioned, the history of it. Is there anything you want to leave as far as last second history knowledge? Anything fun fact? Any
Let's talk about this Affy OG real quick.
Oh yeah.
Dill? Oh,
shit.
that's a way better way. Yes, so we're gonna switch pace.
See, that's a way better.
We went to Wholesome Co. Picked up their Ritual line. It's Affy OG the strain. And what do you guys get for like a smell? As far as like smell and everything.
What I got at first, like you said, that first nutty note, little earthy, mostly a little nut, and then at the end, like a peach note, like a fruity peach note. And I definitely got that on the flavor as well. It's
Yeah.
a peach note.
Yes.
What did you guys think?
Yeah, I got more like earthiness, a little bit of like woody in a sense, like in that beginning, and then the end was more like a calm herbal. And I think that's where you're getting like that peach rings is where I'm getting that floral translation for me. But yeah, other than that, it was a good smooth smoke, man. I liked it overall.
Yeah, I think that was my biggest impression of it all is how clean and how smooth the
Smooth,
smoke
yeah.
We
was.
didn't cough once. We all
No.
like took huge rips off the vape and didn't cough.
Yeah,
No.
yeah, great product in my opinion. Well curated.
I recommend it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I recommend it.
And I will say big shout out. They did list the expiration date on their app. Wholesome Co. did.
That's cool.
So looking as a consumer, that was one thing I was definitely look for and highlight if they do have any expiration dates and stuff that corresponds to when the flower was harvested. So just getting a fresher product, fresher flower that's a living organism, in my opinion, is always going to be a little bit better. And so big shout out to them for listing that.
Yeah,
Fresher the better.
Fresh flower is good flower.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, boys, for supporting the
100.
the flower game, getting
Flower,
us
man.
trying some of these new products. It's
Also for you guys too. What effects did you guys feel? Like, what can you tell of those that are seeking medicinal? You know, was there light, airy for me? I felt kind of light, airy. You know what I mean, no knockout, no couch lock.
Definitely
effect.
more a little
more
energetic.
sociable a little bit for sure.
I think
Anxiety
it,
was down.
Helped me kind of relax in, but focus.
Yeah, there you
right.
go.
It kind of opened my eyes and made me focus.
And finding those strains that have that are really nice. Affy OG.
Yes, sir.
Green
Ready for
Bodie
you.
is the cultivator.
Shout out
Oh
Green
yeah.
Bodie.
So little background on that. Affy OG. It's from Green Bodie Genetics, and Wholesome Co. did a little pheno hunt of his sour best shit ever times OGLA 78 Affy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that is what comes from the Affy OG. That's the end result, which is what we went and got. And like they said, phenomenal, like big
Delicious.
highlights, super big hits, and you're not coughing. Good clarity. Highly recommend.
Yeah. Yeah. thank you again for tuning in with UCC. We really appreciate you guys
100%.
taking the time to sit with us and just enjoy the culture of cannabis for a second.
Yeah, we hope we provided some historical context to the plant, where it came from and its uses and applications.
And if you guys have anything to say or any inputs on, the episode or the history of cannabis, go ahead and throw that in the comment section.
Hey, if you guys want to hear a hot topic or something that you would like us to talk about, throw it in the comment section. We would love to hear new topics that you guys want to hear too.
Yeah, keep up with our page. Keep up with info, man. We're going to be dropping some stuff this year. We're excited.
Got some merch on the way. Got the stickers made out. You guys will be seeing those on output here pretty soon. I don't know how to say it.
You gotta put some on these mics.
I know, right?
Hey, we should, huh?
Yeah.
But we appreciate you guys, man.
Show them some of the sticks.
Oh, let's go. Show them some of the sticks.
Oh,
Let me see one. Let me see one of them.
yeah.
Let me get one of
Let's
them.
grab one of these real quick.
Damn, one for each. Let's see.
See.
Put them on. Put them on.
Zang.
You already know what it is.
You can go on our website. You
UCC
can
what it
purchase
is.
these. I'm just kidding. You can purchase these for 25 cents on our website.
Free if you dab me up in person.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it comes with a free pack.
All right, y'all. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys. We are
Tune
out.
in next week.
Tune in next week every Thursday. It's your boy Sep.
It's your boy Gabe.
This is Wes.
And this is JJ. Peace out, y'all.
Peace out, y'all. Thank you.
Love you. Bye.
Sheesh.